According to World Bank report on global poverty, India has the most number of poor people. The number of Indians living in extreme poverty, surviving on less than 46 rupees a day, increased by 56 million. Further, close to 600 million Indians survive on less than 84 rupees a day. However, China, which is comparable in population size, alleviated poverty at historically unprecedented speed and scale between 1978 and 2018. How China could achieve it is a question which daunts us a lot. That's where our discussion today is centralized around the policies that China has adopted in alleviating its poverty and making the nation as one of the developed nations in the world. In the whole process, let's first see what did China achieve. China suffered from very high rates of extreme poverty, higher than India, during Mao Zedong's rule until the mid 1970s. But since the start of the Deng Xiaoping era, the story changed dramatically. It was found that between 1978 and 2018, China's poverty headcount dropped from 770 million to 5.5 million people. It means that on an average, for 40 years on the trot every year, China pulled 19 million people out of extreme poverty. In doing so, it accounted for almost 75% of the global drop in the number of people living in extreme poverty in this period. In 2021, China declared that it has eradicated extreme poverty according to the National Poverty Threshold, lifting 765 million people since 1978, and that it has built a moderately prosperous society in all respects. Decades of progress in China are also reflected in improvements in other measures of well-being. Taken together, improvements in health, education, and income over the 4 decades are reflected in China's rising position in the Human Development Index from 106 out of 144 countries in 1990 to 85 out of 189 countries in 2019. How did China do it? Let's look into that. China's poverty reduction success relied mainly on 2 pillars. The first pillar was rapid economic growth supported by broad-based economic transformation. Reforms began in the agricultural sector where poor people could benefit directly from improvements in productivity associated with the introduction of market incentives. The development of low-skilled labor-intensive industries provided a source of employment for workers released from agriculture. Urbanization helped migrants take advantage of the new opportunities in the cities, and migrant transfers boosted incomes of their relatives remaining in the villages. Public investment in infrastructure improved living conditions in rural areas but also connected them with urban and export markets. A crucial point to note here from India's perspective is that reforms were incremental, which may have helped businesses and the population adjust to the pace of change. The second pillar was government policies to alleviate poverty, which initially targeted areas disadvantaged by geography and a lack of economic opportunities, but subsequently focused on poor households irrespective of their location. A component of these policies were social protection policies for poor households, including programs in social assistance, insurance, and welfare. Also, 2 other factors mattered substantially. They are effective governance, which was key to the successful implementation of the growth strategy, as well as the evolving set of targeted poverty reduction policies. For instance, China's size necessitated decentralized implementation arrangements with significant scope for local experimentation and a high degree of competition among local governments. Of course, to achieve coherence, local experimentation was subject to strong monitoring and accountability between the levels of government. China also benefited from favorable conditions at the time of opening up, such as relatively high level of human capital endowments, massive investments in education, and expansion of healthcare since 1950s resulted in real achievements. In 1978, the infant mortality rate was 52 per thousand births, less than half of average in China's income group. Life expectancy at birth at 66 years far exceeded that of other developing countries. The primary school enrollment rate was 96% and the secondary school enrollment rate was 49.9%. That is how China's firm and progressive policies have helped in alleviating its poverty in a jet speed manner and astonished the whole world with the kind of progress that it has made very significantly and progressed itself to one of the developed nations status today. I feel that India too has to emulate China as a case study for its economic policies in terms of alleviation of poverty and devise time bound programs and implement them accordingly. Because today, though India counts as one of the top 5 GDP nations in the world, but when we look at the poverty levels on the other extreme, it's not going well with the India's outlook, first of all, with the outsiders when it is coming to economic policies being followed by India. They are not so convincing because, as a progressive country, when you are leapfrogging in terms of ranking in your GDP levels, you should also show an overall growth. I mean to say, an overall economic growth across the spectrum of the population, but that growth cannot be restricted to a few elite individuals in the country. Thank you very much.